Hey folks, in this video example, we're going to show you how to create the Starbucks store locator in MetaLocator. So let's take a look at the Starbucks store locator. I really like the design. It's very clean. There are some things that I don't like about it, but let's give you a quick tour. You can see that it's automatically detected my location, which is great, and it's got the first location kind of highlighted, and it's got this order here button. It's got this really big blue highlight, which for me just kind of gets in the way, so I'm not a huge fan of that. But I really like the way they treat the results and how you move from one to the next. Notice this order here button shows up only on the active result, which is a great effect because otherwise you'd have a ton of buttons to kind of distract your attention. They have a save this store feature that's necessary to sign in to use. And they've got this nice looking details pane that repeats that order here call to action, and it's got a pretty nice layout of these details. Overall, pretty cleanly delivered, not a ton of functionality. The search, as you would expect, you can type in 53211 and it auto-completes using Google autocomplete. And the other thing it can do is filter, so you can see the various filters available by hours, pickup options, and amenities. So let's see what it'll take to build this in MetaLocator. Okay, so here we are in MetaLocator. I've created a brand new rich media example from scratch. And so the first thing I'm going to do is work in the style section to make this look as close to the Starbucks locator as I can. So I'm going to paste in the primary color, which is a nice green, and I'm going to change the secondary color from blue to that light gray. And those are pretty much the only two colors that are used in that Starbucks locator. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the font to Open Sans. They have their own custom font. I think I'm not going to try to hack that font. Open Sans is a pretty good representation. The other thing I'm going to do is their font size is actually a little bit smaller than our default, so I'm going to kick our font down to 0.08. The other thing that you should note is that their buttons and results are very rounded, and so I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to change the border radius to like a 1.3 and give it kind of a little bit more curved effect. And so that's about all I need to do in this style section. The next thing I'm going to do is move on to the search. Okay, in the search section, they have a really simple layout with find a store, and then they also have filter. They also have this location detection down here in the lower right, which is a great way to not have anybody click on a button. So I'm not loving that, but let's go back to the interface builder and let's go into the search form. And under, we already have autocomplete turned on by default, and that's the little location suggestions as you type. I'm going to change the prompt to find a store. I'm actually going to remove the label because they don't have one. They just have a placeholder, and type find a store. And so that is, I think, a good representation of what they've got. The next thing is they've got filters, which by default we call categories. They've got it in this nice arrangement where it actually opens in a separate window. And so the way we'll do that is we will actually move the categories into the advanced area. And so we'll just drag that down. And then we will add a button. By default, it's this little filter guy. I'm going to go ahead and add an advanced toggle. And that's going to give us a little more control over that filter guy's display. So let's just move that to the end of the list of options, and I'm going to change it to say filters, just like theirs. And by default, when you click on advanced, it actually expands and contracts the options. In our case, we want it to open in a modal window. So to use that toggle option, and that will cause it to pop open just as you see there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the the option to search by checkboxes as opposed to this filter dropdown. So I'm going to choose, instead of dropdowns, I'm going to choose checkboxes. And let's see how that looks. So that shows filters listed here. Let's compare what we've got over here. Notice they have these little icons displayed. I like that. So under the interface builder, I'm going to check the show category icons. I don't know if I have icons for each one of these categories, but yeah, we have these kind of products, but these amenities all have these individual categories. Excuse me, the individual category icons. If you're curious where those are configured, you can go over to categories and you can specify within a given category, you can specify which icon that you can browse right here should be displayed for that particular category. And so in order to reduce the kind of clutter, I'm just going to show amenities in this example so that we have a nice kind of categorized list of checkboxes. So that's, I think, getting closer to what we want. But one thing, though, that I really do like is how the search is positioned over the results, and also when you click filter, this all kind of stays off to the left. It doesn't control or cover the existing map. And so how I'm going to accommodate that is actually under layout. Right now we have the search form position is at the top, which means it's above the directory and the map. I'm going to change that to above the list, which is positions the search form directly above the list of results, which is what you see there. So before I keep cruising, I'm going to go ahead and save what I have, and that will just make sure I don't lose my work. Now that we've got the search form basically where we want it, I want to address that we've got that we're down here in Alabama when we probably shouldn't be. I'm here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and so I want to make the initial results to be just like the Starbucks locator and show near my location. And so I'm going to go under results, and under initial state, I'm going to go ahead and change that to show nearest. And that will initially position me directly nearby, showing locations nearby to me. The other thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to make this map look a little bit more like theirs, and theirs is Google Maps. You can certainly configure Google Maps if you want to pay the premium. In this example though, I'm just going to switch the style of this map over to what we call Palo Alto 2. That's a little nod at Google, and so that looks a little bit more like Google. The other thing I'm going to do while I'm down here is this by default is this map marker. I know another one called FA Circle that I think looks better. It looks more like what they've got there. So those are those circles, and I think I'd actually like it to be kind of not as giant to kind of line up with what they have. So I think we've got normal, and then we've got 2x. I think normal is actually a little bit closer to what they have. Let's try 2x. I think 2x is a little bit too big, so we'll do that. And that's, I think, a much better map marker. I'm not a huge fan of this giant blue display. It just feels kind of like it's in the way, and so I'm going to leave our existing, this is the little icon here. It shows my accurate location. I can control that, the class here. It's this location arrow. It also has this fancy pulse animation, if you can see that. The idea is to give a nod to the user's location, but honestly I think this is a little bit overwhelming and it kind of makes the results hard to see. So I'm going to go ahead and skip over that. The next thing that we should focus on though is the results card. So by default, our rich media template has a bunch of stuff in the results card, and so the first step here I think is really for us to just delete some stuff. So under results, I'm going to go into the list. I'm going to go ahead and delete the image. I'm going to delete these. I'm actually going to delete Street View. Let's see. They don't have phone, which is kind of interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that so that it matches up. I'm going to limit the amenities like we did before to the ones in the amenities group. Those are the ones that I've got icons for, just to kind of outline better. Their address doesn't have an icon next to it, so I'm going to go ahead and remove some of these icons. So under full address, I'll get rid of that icon. And then also our list of categories has its icon, and I'm going to get rid of that. And that's how that displays. Our categories have little dots between them. Theirs don't, and I think that kind of contributes to the overall clean layout. So I'll go ahead and remove that from the styles list. And we're getting a little bit closer to what they have. Now, one thing that they have that I thought was really cool is they have this order here button that displays only when you click on the result. And so I think that's pretty neat. And the way that I did that is I actually used some CSS. And so this CSS is available in Pro and higher accounts. And I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that into Style and Color. When it comes to implementing a locator for a brand like Starbucks, you're going to do some custom styling to pixel perfect match the brand. And so in terms of setting expectations, there's some stuff that the interface builder does like really well, and then if you're really trying to get into the nitty-gritty, if you will, with respect to the styles and matching existing brand standards, ultimately some CSS would likely be necessary. So I've added that CSS, and so the way that it works is it has a particular class that we've defined. Let me go and find it here. When the directory is clicked, the card should have a background color, so that got included. And then also there's this active button in here somewhere. So I paused the video because I was hunting around for a declaration in that custom CSS that doesn't exist. It's not something that we even need to worry about right now. So I'm going to go to these buttons here, and they're using like an order here button. In MetaLocator, that could be a custom link, or it could be the default link field. I'm going to use the default link field in this example, and I'm going to change this from a secondary button. We're going to actually make these primary buttons. So I'll say this is a primary button. And it could even be an outline button, but I actually like the way the primary button looks. I'm going to remove the icon from the inside of the button, and because that I think looks a little bit cleaner. And then I'm going to also give this a that ML show active only. And what this does is it's going to only show that button when the result card is active. And so I think that's a really nice effect, so much that we added it to the style dropdown. We don't necessarily need an email, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. You could style it the exact same way. You could even give it that class that we showed before. So this is getting a lot closer to what the Starbucks locator looks like. And so at this point, it's really a matter of repeating some of those style declarations in the details card and adding some store hours. So let's talk for a little bit about how MetaLocator can handle store hours. So looking at the Starbucks locator, you can see that we've got some of these store closing soon in yellow, and these other kind of tags that are indicating kind of alert statuses, things that may or may not be available in a particular store. And store closing soon or store closed or store open is what we call location status, and that requires that hours data is in the system. And in this example account, hours data is in the system. So let's go to the list of results, and what we're going to do is add the hours field. And so by default, this is going to show up as a giant table of the hours that we have for each of these locations. And so that's actually huge, right? We don't necessarily want that. So we're going to go within list, we're going to expand hours, and we're going to choose not just the hours the full table of hours, but we're going to pull in the hours status template. And what this is a convenient way of showing the current locations open, closed, or closing soon status. Those by default display in green, yellow, and red, as is kind of typical. And so this gives us a nice status indicator. Let's see, they have it after the distance. And so we're going to go ahead and just drag this down past the category list. We don't have distance being displayed here, so while we're in there, we'll go ahead and add the field, distance, and that is going to come by default. It's pretty kind of long-winded, approximately 7.3 miles from your location. I'm going to go in there and make it kind of match what this says, 6.1 miles away. So that's 0.2 decimal places. I think that's right. Miles away. This is what's called a sprintf format, and that's actually far too many. I think, is it %02f? I think that's probably better. Yeah, 7.28. Actually, let's drop that down to 1 decimal place, because I don't think anybody is going to make a decision based on 7.3 versus 7.28 miles away. So that's where that is. And I'll bring that down after distance, or excuse me, after hours. Let's bring it actually right after the category list. And so now we're getting yet a little bit closer. So we have, in terms of an inventory, we have the name of the location, we have an address, we have the distance, we have, closing soon. You could do with some custom templating, you could do closes in 32 minutes. I'm not going to cover that. And then we also have the icons that should indicate the services. And so that gives us a pretty good representation of the Starbucks locator. The other thing that they have that's pretty good is this detail page, and I'm going to jump into that in this next segment. So the way that they've got details is in this kind of tiny info icon. Not a huge fan of it, but for the purposes of this demo, we will do the same thing. And so what we can do there is, I think the icon name, this is the one that I built before the video, is, FA Info Circle, so I don't have to browse a whole lot. So I'm going to go down to my link to details, and I'm going to change the icon from this little like ellipsis to this info circle. And I'm also, since they don't have a label of any kind, I'm just going to wipe out the description here. And there will be kind of no text in there. So now it's just this little icon. And you know what? Theirs are gray. And so I think we should make ours gray too. I'm going to do that by using the secondary text class. So you might remember at the very beginning of this video, I made the gray secondary color and the green the primary color. And so notice if I make that secondary text, that turns gray. And while we're at it, we should probably do the same thing for that unified share icon, but I'll get to that when I get up there. I actually want it next to that share icon, so I'm going to drag it up to the top, and we have now linked to details, and we have unified share. Let's orient those. They're a little tight together, so we'll take care of that in a second. Under unified share, let's change this to have a left margin. So that would be ML-3. That's margin left 3. And then the other thing I want is secondary text again, because I want them to be both gray. I know a lot of these by heart, which is why I've been typing them in, but you can also scroll through this list. So let's look for secondary text. There it is. And so that'll allow those both to be gray. And so now when I click this little icon guy, I go to the details page. And the details page in theirs is actually quite nice. I like it a lot. They have the title, they have, closes soon, they have the address, they have the distance, they have this call, they have get directions, and then they also have like the store hours and such. I think I've covered basically these pieces. One thing I didn't cover was this giant order button. So as part of the last thing that I'll cover in this we will add a giant order button. And so I'll go to the details, and the thing that I'm going to add is the link field. I'm going to drag it down here to this links area, and then by default it's website. I'm going to change that to like order now, and I'm going to give it a style of a primary button and a large button. And so the combination of those two things is going to give us this big button, but this also has a cool little drop shadow. And so I'm also going to do a shadow on that one, just so we can make it look exactly like theirs, or at least as close as possible. And then if we wanted it to go off to the right, we could do a float to the right, and that would live in the lower right hand corner of that. They didn't have a little icon, so I think we should ditch ours as well. And that's an example of how to create that detail. We saw ours. These would all be category icons, and so that would also display the same. The get directions button, as long as we're in there, by default is already in the details pane. It's up here in the top. Things in this toolbar container come out this way, but if I want to make that look a little bit different, maybe I want to have it right after address, I can drag it out of there. Notice it turns into a regular link, and so I'm going to turn it into an outline button by expanding directions, and under styles I'm going to give it a primary outline button, and that should look very much like what you've got going on over here, this kind of get directions thing. One last piece is this phone. Remember, we got rid of it on the results card. We're going to show it here on the details card. Let's trash this email and move the phone number in just above the directions. And I'm going to go ahead and wipe out the icon that's in there by default. And I'm going to point out one little feature that we have that's called a label. They have the word call in front of their text, and so we can do that too by specifying a label. And I actually foolishly added that to the full address, so I want to add that to the phone, and that'll give us kind of a little call prompt. And then I'm going to go ahead and wipe out that icon because that's not really necessary. So now we have a click to call, we have get directions, we have the description, and we could delete all these things. The store hours, we already showed how to add that. They don't have images, and so I'll go ahead and remove that. And that's basically all the topics that we would look to cover in this Starbucks locator. Before this call, I went through this process in a little bit more detail, and this is what we came up with. And so this is a template that's available on our website under demos. And so you can use this, you can export it and import it into your account. Then you can change the colors if you like pieces of this. This we spent a little bit more time on, so it is a little bit more fine tuning. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that it provides a little bit more insight in the power that you can have available to you in the interface builder in MetaLocator. Thanks a lot.